Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next video in the Samantha Smith podcast series here. It's been 6 months since I did my last video. Where does time fly? I didn't realize it had been that long, but I am still working hard on all of this, and just wanted to do a quick update video and let you know what's been going on. And I plan on doing some more videos, and I want to try to keep them shorter as well. So hopefully this one won't be too long either. Just a quick overview of the plane crash and the day of the plane crash and what happened. And I'll try to remember as best as I can to the best of my ability with all this. It's been a while since I've looked at this portion of it, but and I'm going to go off memory. So if I make any mistakes, I'll try to correct them in the comments, or you can correct me if you want to. But anyway, well, for the past 6 months, I've actually been working on writing the book, and I've gone deep into that and kind of forsake the videos a little bit. But the videos have really helped with writing and helps me organize and all that stuff. So I've been working hard on that, and I figured I'd do a quick video just to get it back out there and start updating on some of this stuff. And I think we left off on the plane crash. So I'll try to basically go over the day of the plane crash. And Samantha was in Hertfordshire in England at a place called Brocket Hall, filming the last scene for an episode called the Wayward Train. The Wayward Train. And the last scene of that show is Samantha actually in London in the West End on St. Martin's Lane, and she's about to go in to see a musical called Starlight Express. But the last scene that they actually filmed with Samantha was at Brocket Hall, and it's the scene where she's walking with Robert Wagner on the lawn, and Wagner's talking about how disappointed he is in Samantha, and he gives her a birthday card from her little sister. So that's actually the final scene. So when they wrapped up that scene, Samantha said goodbye to all the cast and crew and all of that, and she passed around a script and got it signed by all of the people involved with Lime Street. And she was heading home with her father, Arthur, who was on the trip with her. And they were actually going to go to Switzerland, but she wasn't appearing in any of the episodes or any of the scenes for the episode that they were filming in Switzerland. Was called The Swiss Watch and Wait. But she wasn't going to be in any of the scenes, but she still wanted to go to Switzerland with the crew and all that, and was scheduled to go there. But it was decided by the producers, I believe Ray Austin, probably Robert Wagner, that it was okay for her to go back home and maybe do some packing for Hollywood, which is where she was going to be moving with Arthur sometime in September. And then they could fly back to Switzerland and join the crew there and get to see Gstaad and all of that. So Samantha and Arthur were going to head home and then head back to Switzerland after a few days of packing. So when the filming ended for that episode, Samantha and Arthur, they wound up doing some shopping and sightseeing in London. They met with some of Arthur's relatives, and then they were scheduled to fly home on Sunday, August 25th. So they flew back and landed in Boston at Logan Airport, and sometime early, probably afternoon on Sunday. And there had been a lot of delays. There had been some heavy rains earlier on in the day, so the flights had been pushed back maybe a half an hour or so, something like that. And Jane had actually driven to Augusta, to the airport there. At one point, they told her to go back home because they probably wouldn't be coming in for another hour and a half. So actually, the delays had been pushed even longer than a half hour. But anyway, she went back home and then eventually drove back to Augusta to expect them to come in, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of 10 o'clock, something like that. So when the what happened was the plane actually the scheduled flight actually got transitioned at one point due to the delays, and they changed the flight number from 1788 to 1808, and two of the scheduled passengers on the flight that Samantha and Arthur were scheduled on wound up getting another flight added that was a direct flight to Bangor. So two passengers who were supposed to be on that plane actually got their own flight direct to Bangor. And what happened was there were two additional passengers that came on to the plane as well, and they had to amend the flight to land in Auburn, Lewiston for these two additional passengers. So the pilot on the plane was Roy Fraunhofer, and his co-pilot was David Owen. And the other 6 passengers on the plane, there were 8 passengers, were Joanne Riley, Earl Dunphy, James Eastman, and Alan Savall, I believe. Is that so there were six passengers, sorry. And so there were 4 besides Samantha and Arthur, and the 2 that were added were Joanne Riley and Earl Dunphy to Auburn Lewiston. James Eastman was going to Augusta with Samantha and Arthur, and then Alan Savall was flying into Waterville, which is where he lived. He worked for Scott Paper Company, and I spoke with somebody in his family, and he actually wasn't even supposed to be on that flight, and he was supposed to be scheduled on a later flight and changed to the earlier flight, which is unfortunate, and I was sorry to hear that. But those were the people on the plane, and so there was a lot of confusion what was going on at that point. I know there were some things. I won't go into detail on this. I just want to give an overview of what was going on. So there was delays. They had the flight changed, the flight number changed. Passengers were taken off of the flight. 2 passengers added onto it. There was a lot of confusion, and there was actually confusion with the flight follower or the controller about what VORTAC they were going to use. The VORTAC is basically like the GPS for the plane. And there was one in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and they used one in Kennebunk. And the flight, according to the flight follower or the controller, they were supposed to be using the one in Kennebunk, but it had been switched to use the one in Portsmouth because that's the one that they would use for Auburn Lewiston. And they actually questioned Roy Fraunhofer, and Roy Fraunhofer had to tell them that the flight had actually been changed and that he was going to use the one in Portsmouth and would change to the Kennebunk one after Auburn Lewiston. So a lot of confusion going on here. He also forgot to hand in the weight of the plane. There was a lot of weird stuff going on at that point, and the additional 2 passengers. So the plane took off, I believe, somewhere around 9:15, 9:20-ish, and took off with no problems. But on their way to Auburn Lewiston, they were already off track. They had gone off track about a mile to the right, I believe. So the ATC, who was in Portland, was Richard Benton, and he was the one contacting the plane and was trying to make sure that they were on track. And there were a few communications that went through, but the plane itself was fluctuating in height and speed beyond what would be normal for that flight from the start. It was off course, and it was flying slightly erratically. So when they came close to Auburn Lewiston, there's a glide slope intercept that they were supposed to connect to, and the ATC on duty, Richard Benton, asked them if they had picked it up, because he noticed that that he wasn't sure based on what he was seeing on his screen. And I believe it was David Owen, and the co-pilot was the one who was supposed to be handling all the two-way communications. And I believe he said that they had not picked it up yet. And then Richard Benton asked them again, and I believe Roy Fraunhofer actually did the communication on this one. I might have it mixed up. It might have been Roy Fraunhofer first and David Owen second. I'll have to go back. But when we go into this in detail, I'll get that correct. But he said that, yes, they had picked it up. There was a great article written in Flying Magazine back in 1987 by J. Mac McClellan, who at this point noted he was an excellent pilot, wrote for the magazine. He said that all the should have been flashing all over the place because of where they were as far as height and speed and all of that. They obviously flew right through this glide slope without ever picking it up, and all of the instruments on the plane would have been flashed. They would have known this, but they said that they did pick it up. So that's odd there. But after they flew through that, the plane really started fluctuating in height and speed all over the place, very erratic. And as it was coming up, before I go to that, Richard Benton asked them if basically everything's okay, gave them instructions for missed approach, which Roy Fraunhofer knows the instructions for that, and he also gave them a maneuver to correct themselves because they were obviously off course. And he gave this maneuver, and Roy Fraunhofer accepted it. And that was something that at the end, during the investigation, that they tried to use as a cause of the crash. But it was a maneuver that wasn't beyond the ability of Roy Fraunhofer. Richard Benton would not have given it to him but it was not an actually authorized FAA maneuver, so they could use that. But anyway, Fraunhofer, there was never any concern or any of that from the voices of the pilots of the plane. They never seemed like they were concerned about what was going on with the flight. So they flew through the glide slope, flying erratically after that, fluctuating in speed all over the place, height, all that. And what wound up happening is they clipped on some trees on something called Christian Hill. And Christian Hill is right before the airport. And this is a flight that Fraunhofer had flown many times, and actually had even flown with David Owen as his co-pilot previously, like a few weeks before or a month before or something like that. They were familiar with this flight. It's not like it was something not new. And Fraunhofer was a very experienced pilot, and so a lot of questions with this. So they clipped the trees on Christian Hill, and ear witnesses and eyewitnesses on the ground they heard the plane, they saw the plane coming in full throttle, full speed, all the fuel injection to the engines. I mean, it was, they heard the whining of the engines, just super loud. The plane flew right over a house, just barely missing the house, and then wound up crashing into Moosebrook Ravine, and wound up going down into the ravine, actually. And when it hit, the plane was going at such full force that it exploded, and it was likened to napalm. That's what the people on the ground heard and saw of this plane. It was devastating. I mean, nobody could have survived this plane crash. It was just, and this was a small Beechcraft 99. Usually when they don't explode with this much ferocity, I guess. So a lot of questions there, but just very tragic, and a lot of questions with this plane, with the flight. And I'll get into it in more detail, but I figured that was like a brief overview of what happened. I hit on some of the key points with it, and we'll go through it in more detail after this. But very tragic and very severe, we'll say. And J. Mac McClellan actually said in his article that it was probably the worst piloted small aircraft flight in history. That's what he said in his article. It was that bad. So anyway, hopefully you'll keep tuning into these videos, and I'll try to get some more up. And what I'll do in the next video is we'll probably go into the investigation, the NTSB, and we'll talk about James Burnett, because I think there's a lot of context that you need to know regarding this flight and the plane crash, and we'll get through some of that, and then I'll go into the details of the NTSB report and all of that. But sorry it's been so long since I've done a video, and hopefully you enjoyed this one. I just went through it quick. I'm sure I probably got something wrong, but thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, thanks, bye.